Hey guys, welcome to Switch Tech Solutions. Today we are going to be going over 4 tips and tricks everyone needs to know when getting started in Packet Tracer. These tips were critical through my studies and will give you a good base to start experimenting and troubleshooting. A good foundation is critical, so let's get right into the tips. So let's get started with how we use our workspace. This entire white background you see is the workspace, and in the bottom left are all the different devices. You can see as I'm scrolling through, the top row is a whole bunch of categories, the bottom row is different subcategories of the devices, and then on the right it lists all the specific different devices you can bring in to the Cisco Packet Tracer workspace. The first thing we're going to do is go over to network devices and routers, and let's click on any of the routers in this right section. Then click again in the workspace and it's automatically brought in. Next, let's try a switch. Go to the switches subcategory, click on a switch, and click in the workspace. We've now brought a router and a switch into our network. We can do a bit more with the devices now that they're in our workspace. Just click on it and simply move it. And if we also want to, we can zoom in or zoom out of the devices in the top bar. Next, select both devices and move them anywhere. If we'd like to copy and paste, simply highlight over them, press Ctrl-C, and then Ctrl-V to paste. Next, if you go up to the top row, there's the delete button. Simply click the delete button and then click on any of the devices in the workspace. Now that the device has been deleted, to bring it back, simply press Ctrl-Z. If you don't want to use hotkeys, simply use the undo and redo buttons that you can find on the top toolbar. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to customize our router and devices. This is extremely useful if you need to add a certain number of ports, or you need a port that doesn't come natively on certain routers. This allows you to customize them and completely change how your network runs. So first, go to the router section and grab the 2911 router. Put it into the workspace and double click on it. Let's maximize this window and zoom in on the physical device view. This gives us a full look at exactly what the back of these Cisco devices would look like. You can see here we have 4 open module slots that we can fill with any module from the left section. But first, we have to turn the device off. Next, let's click on the 4ESW module. And if we go down to the bottom, it actually tells us what it is. It's a 4 switching ports. So click on it, drag it, and drop it into one of the module slots. It fits perfectly, and we can now use that. Click on the 2T, and these are 2 serial ports. Drag and drop into a module, and you have 2 serial ports. Now let's try the HSMD. This is for 2 specific smart grid ports. But if you can see, when we try and put it into our module, that module is actually not compatible. So if you want to use specific modules, you will have to mess around and find the right routers or switches for you. Now let's turn our router back on and let's check if those have successfully integrated into our router. Go up to the CLI. And once it is loaded, we will check on our interfaces. The first thing we'll do is type EN to enter the privileged exec mode, and then we will use the show IP interface brief command. This command brings up all the interfaces on our router. As we can see, we have our 3 gigabit Ethernet ports, we have our 2 serial ports, and we also have the 4 switching ports, both using the modules we successfully installed. Feel free to mess around, try different ports, try different routers. Cisco Packet Tracer is very deep and has lots of technology for you to use and try out. So let's get started with our third tip by talking about how we connect devices in Packet Tracer. So we have a router, but let's go down to the bottom left corner to the network devices and switches. Let's grab a 2960 and put it anywhere into the workspace. Next, let's go down to End Devices and let's grab a PC. Click on the PC icon and put it anywhere into the workspace. The next step, we have to physically connect these with cables. So let's go down to the connections, and we have all these options here. Now the option we want to use is the copper straight through, which basically emulates your basic Ethernet connection. Click on a device, and we have a couple options of where we can connect it. And as this is Ethernet or RJ45, it needs to be put into the fast Ethernet port. And if you try to put it into a USB port or anything else, it's actually not going to work. So put it into the fast Ethernet port, and now click on the next device you want to connect it to. Click on the fast Ethernet 01, and we have now made a connection between the PC and the switch. Next, let's grab another copper straight through, click on the switch, the gigabit 01 port, and then click on the router and also pick a gigabit Ethernet port. Now, as you see here, we got a couple different colors going on, so let's explain them. First, we've got the green next to the PC, we've got the yellow next to the switch, and we have the two red next to the switch and the router. So the green means that the connection is ready to go and it's fully connected. The yellow means that the connection has been made, but it's just booting up and getting ready to be fully connected. So it's a sort of standby mode. Third, the two red triangles indicate that there is no connection made between the router and the switch. So the reason these two are different is because the switch, when anything makes connection with it, the switch's ports are automatically on by default. So when the PC connects to the switch, you will see it automatically go green and eventually green on both sides. However, the router, all the ports are automatically turned off by default. So, to get the connection between the router and the switch active, we have to physically go into the router and turn on our gig 01 port. So let's do that. The router and go to the CLI menu. First, we have to type the enable command to go to privilege exec mode. And then we need to use the configure terminal command to go to the global configuration mode. Next, we need to go to our specific port, and that is the interface gigabit 01 command. Finally, we type the no shutdown command to ensure that that port always stays up when we have a connection to it. Press enter, minimize, and let's check out the connection. So as we see, the port on the router instantly goes up, while the port on the switch just has to configure and will take a few moments. So we now have full connection between our router, our switch, and our PC, and we are ready to begin configuration. While organizing the workspace may seem simple enough, it's really a critical tool or skill that you should learn right when you start with Packet Tracer. It's going to make your life so much easier when your networks start growing exponentially in size. So let's get right into it. And the first thing we're going to look at is the labels that are on the devices right now. We see that there's a couple different labels. The first ones are the actual device types, and the second are the names of the devices. Finally, we also have the port labels there. If we go up to the options and the preferences tab, we can either turn these on or off as we like. When your networks do get quite large, it could become quite cluttered. So decide which ones you want when you're starting out. Let's minimize out of that and go back to the labels. If we want to edit some of them, if we click on the device name, we can erase that and put in anything we want. This helps you to differentiate different devices and keep everything in an orderly fashion. We know instantly what that PC is doing and supposed to do. If we go up to the Notes section on the top of the taskbar, click on the Place Note button, and then click anywhere in the workspace. We can now put a note like it says. This is extremely useful for highlighting what large networks do, what specific devices are supposed to be doing. At a glance, you'll know what you've already done and really help you keep organized as the network gets larger. For instance, we're going to put in the IP address that the PC is going to receive, as well as the subnet address. We can highlight this extremely easily and move it around. And now we know at a glance, without having to search through all these GUIs and all these other things, exactly what IP it has. I recommend doing this for all sorts of things. Your networking scheme with all the IP addresses, the different names of devices, the different routing protocols you're using, especially if you're doing projects for class, it really helps you keep everything focused and understand what you're doing in the smaller bits of the network and the entire network as a whole. It may take a little bit of work at the beginning, but it will really pay off at the end. The last thing we're going to do is show the ellipses tool. This allows you to draw ellipses on the screen. You can either select an outline color or you can select a fill color, but make sure to click the fill color dot to be able to use it. Click and drag on the screen and then let go once you have put it to the size you want. What this is great for is organizing sections of the network into smaller, easier to manage segments. And it allows you to organize it into one small bubble. Now, the reason this is so good doesn't immediately become apparent when you have such a small network. But let's switch over to a separate project that I worked on personally while I was in school. Now, as you see here, this is a massive network, but it's simply broken down into 6 smaller sections. As we see in this Europe, this light blue, we have labeled where it is, the routing protocol I'm using, and all the IP addressing schemes to easily be able to see it. I don't have to go digging around, checking show commands. It's super easy and simple to see. If we go down to the pink part, which is the London part, we see that we are using VLANs and different, and separating them depending on the interfaces with the switches that are available. Overall, by utilizing all these tips, your workspace will be extremely neat, tidy, and organized. This is going to make your life extremely easy, and if you start good habits now, you will keep them for the future. Thank you guys so much for watching. That concludes this tutorial for Cisco Packet Tracer. If you liked this video, feel free to subscribe and hit the like button, and I will see you in my next video.